guys, welcome to episode 39 of CMDTower's Brews and Builds. I'm Mr. Common number 5, and my fellow host has grown a better beard than Gosta Dirk in the quarantine, Big Tuck. What's going on, Tuck?
Dirk. Hi.
It is a fierce beard. It's nice.
You know, it's been nice. It's been an experiment. I don't think I've let it go this long for a while. I also want to say, hey, snakelets and hatchlings? Question mark.
Ooh.
I got bits, and you'll see more of them. Also, hashtag suck it, hashtag coward Dan, need to get that one out, and hashtag scallop potatoes, because I had potatoes for dinner yesterday. So,
nice.
I kind of feel like the week before last was hard because it was my birthday, and I pretty much was in a stupor the whole week. And then last week was kind of recovering and like dealing with some work stuff because people were moving around a bunch of stuff, but like. This week, so far, I'm like kind of hitting my stride, maybe hitting a new season, as we know how I like to describe areas of my life. So,
or is it a reboot?
Ooh, kind of. Like I kind of got the mojo. I think seeing my brother and sister-in-law for the first time in a long time was very helpful, and my niece. So, But how are you, Mr. Combo? I know you can't tell, but he looks a little haggard.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little rough. I've been up since 1 a.m. Just for some reason, we got done doing 40 Life in a Dash yesterday. I think I went to bed at 9 o'clock. I mean, nothing crazy. And I woke up at like 1 and just could not go back to sleep. So powered through, did a bunch of work, like starting at like 5 a.m., ended around 1 p.m., and then took a trazodone, and that just straight knocked me out. I mean, I woke up in a pile of drool. Nice. I look like I'm on death's doorstep.
You're lucky. Well,
I'm pretty sure you're in like an alternate sleep universe right
and
now. You're just like your schedule's all out of whack, and you're sleeping during the day.
You're also kind of lucky that you didn't sleep through this. Like, I mean, you took a sleeping pill. What if you woke up at like?
No, I had an alarm set.
What if you don't remember any of this?
Oh, great question.
Well, that's a risk.
Only time. Well, we have an audio history of it, so you can you can memento yourself and get this hour and a half.
Oh man. Well, guys, thanks for watching the episode, and this was only able to happen with the help of Squee McGee and his audio production company, Rich Chaos Records, here in Kansas City. What's going on? What are we still, Reverend Squee?
Yeah, I've been on that one for a hot minute now.
What are we?
It's still Reverend Squee out there. So the house next door to me, is starting to be under construction. So I think I'm slowly go insane for about 3 to 5 months.
Wait, did he buy it or something?
No, somebody bought it. They're flipping it.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, yeah, you've been talking about that.
All right. Well, if you guys want to spit more bits like this, because they are gems.
Oh, get ready. If you guys are excited about some bits, get ready.
And the CMDTower team and all the content we put out, head over to our sponsor, level1gameshop.com. They sell magic accessories like the exclusive CMDTower playmat and 100-pack sleeves. They also have a sweet TCG player store with over 99% accuracy rating and very competitive prices. All of the info will be in the show notes below. Another way to support the show is also head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/CMDTower. We have 4 different pledge levels, and rewards vary from just getting access to the very savage, ruthless Discord, or getting your own set of CMDTower playmat and sleeves. And, of course, the free way to share the content you're already watching and or listening to is just share. Sharing's caring. Yeah. Do it.
Like, smash that like button.
Do it now. Oh, yeah. Yeah, now that we're on YouTube, is it smash that like, smash that subscribe?
I think it's, what is it? It's like, it's definitely smash. I think it's one of each. Like, smash that like, and then make sure to hit that subscribe and smash that like, maybe.
Ooh, we got to figure out a way to combine this.
Yeah.
Subscribe, like, lubribe. Oh, God, we're moving on.
We're losing. You've lost it.
Every little bit of interaction from the collective helps. And every episode, we do want to give a big shout out to the music provided in the beginning and the end from Pink Royal. And, of course, stay tuned till the end to get details on how you can win a mystery Commander 20 deck and playmat and sleeves from CMDTower. So Brews and Builds is our deck tech series. It's all about the decks that Big Tuck and I have in our Path to 32. Every episode, we're going to talk about one of those Path to 32 decks, but hey, in a cool manner of brewing some beers. So we broke it down into 4 categories. The first one's ramp and setting your board state. We correlate that to a grain bill.
Yes, and grains are the foundation of any beer. They usually include a combination of base and specialty malts, usually about a 60 to 40% ratio. This helps with the color, the taste, and most importantly, the alcohol content of a beer. And when your local brew screws it up, then your beer doesn't turn out the way you want it to. So decks always need ways to grow, stabilize, and ramp into your bigger threats. And just like a grain profile, they're usually a mix of staples and specialty cards.
And then the next one's going to be, how does your board interact with all of your opponents? That's the hop profile.
Hops give the beer its patented bitterness and herbal floral flavors. They grow in a variety of strands and help distinguish subcategories like IPAs. Our hop choices help clear and interact with the board so your decks can do what it wants.
Then the next thing is going to be, how does your deck actually win so you can move from your computer office chair in this quarantine life 5 feet over to your couch because you have nowhere to go. We're calling that yeast.
Yes, and yeast are living microorganisms that eat the sugar from the grain and poop out alcohol and CO2. It adds the alcohol content and the carbonation. Without yeast, you'd be drinking flat sugar water, and without yeast cards, your deck wouldn't meet the goal of actually winning the game.
Then we have shenanigans. It's going to be cool pet cards and synergies that are in the deck that are just kind of fun, but, maybe don't really just fully fit in the deck or just completely don't fit in the deck. We're calling that a spice package.
Yes, and not every beer has them, but spices and other additives help separate a normal stock beer from a specialty one. It could be the pepper that turns a stout into a jalapeno stout, or the addition of lactate that will turn any beer into something that's a little sweeter and a little cloudier. Not every deck has something that makes it pop, but if it does, is where we talk about it.
Yeah, and then the cap off, we have redundancy. That's a bottle capping. These are going to be big textonized recommendations to the deck that are under $5, under $50, and a personal recommendation that actually has no budget. The only restrictions, we're not going to talk about mana-only lands, which this section's always so hard to do when we're doing a deck that's literally just been built because it's already been tuned, especially when it's your deck. But hey, let's get brewing and see how we're going to do this. So today we're talking about how Xyris let all these snakes on this plane. Get it? Plane? Because Magic the Gathering takes place on planes. And that terrible movie, Snakes on a Plane.
You bite your tongue.
So Big Tuck, this is my second Temur deck, and I feel like I picked the worst movie in the world to cross-reference it with, but it makes sense.
I am extremely excited about this episode, mostly because I'm sick of hearing about this cussing deck every week for the last 3 months or however long it's been. It's felt like years. This is part of the reasons why I feel like I'm going insane, because I see this every time I played against you. You've talked about nothing else. But I will say, we'll get into this, but I do for the most part like this deck. And once we read through, I got some factoids, but let's talk a little bit about the card first. I think one thing that's really unique about it is that it does 3 things that make it very unique in these colors.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you go ahead and read off what Xyris' casting costs and what he actually does.
Okay, so he is it's 2 colorless and Temur. That's green, white, red for legendary creature Snake
Leviathan.
Snake Leviathan. You can just turn this into Leviathan Tribal too. Look at that. So he's a 3/5 flyer. Whatever an opponent draws, except for the first card they draw on each of their draw steps, create a 1/1 green snake creature with that's also a token. And then also, whenever Xyris, the Writhing Storm, deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each draw that many cards. And then you create more snakes. Snake eyes. So before we put the spaghetti into the serpent generator, I have a couple of facts here to talk a little bit. So there are a lot of snakes in this deck and on this plane. So the first one I had is, do you guys know what the oldest snake card printed in Magic history is?
Is it just called Snake?
It's just Snake. It's out of Arabian Nights, and actually this is one of the first cards that I ever opened when I first started playing in the early 90s. It's Naf's Afs. It's not very good, so we don't need to get into it, but it has some very cool artwork, and it's effectively worthless now. So,
all right, cool.
Things have changed. So I also looked up, so what do you guys call, do you know what they actually scientifically call a bunch of snakes that are together, like a murder of crows? You know what they call snakes?
A slither of snakes?
A pit?
I like that. So it's traditionally a den or nest, or more recently, they call a bunch of snakes together our local Sunday play group. So kind of weird how science picked up on that. And then I also had a last question about snakes. So what is considered the most evil house in Harry Potter?
Slytherin.
Well, actually, it doesn't matter because that series in the world of wizardry completely sucks and it's complete trash. So,
I hate
just a couple of quick facts about snakes there before we dive into it.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. Thank you. I feel further educated, and I feel good now.
Thank you for that.
So,
so I will. And like I said briefly before we said this, now that we know what the card does, I think Temur for me is one of those colors that I've never really liked too much. Just because it seems like they're all fairly similar in some scopes, and there's none that kind of really stand out. So this one really does a lot of cool things in these colors. It's got a lot of support. It's kind of like if you took Nekuzar the Mind Razor and swapped out the damage from drawing cards and instead put in ramp and more token strategies. And one thing I will applaud you for, even though I'm sick of hearing about this deck, I do like it, and I do like how you really, when you're building decks around, especially when it's around like an exciting commander that does cool things, I think you really do a good job of building it like top down, right?
Yeah.
Where you really kind of need this commander out and running, which is also, you do a really good job of that. It is sometimes one of the weak points of some of your decks,
sure,
which we'll get into a little bit later. But overall, like I thought you did a really good job of like identifying the strengths in each one of these categories that it has and giving some of them a little bit more love, which I think you did a pretty good job of choosing which one of those is a little bit better.
Sure.
But really like building it to kind of have a lot of different things going for it.
Yeah, so, I actually saw this guy get spoiled by Jumbo Commander DJ, and I think when I saw the post, I literally bolted to our local Facebook group and said, calling dibs, this is mine, because the last time I saw a really cool commander get previewed, Kaikar, I sat on it, and then friend of the cast, Will, was like, hey, I'm going to build Kaikar, and I was like, yes, son of a bitch.
Well, we're not quite big enough yet with players where you can, like, everyone has kind of their rogues galleries of decks they like to play, so we're not quite big enough where people don't have the decks where you can kind of do that, right? Like if we're in a 10 or 15 or 20 group, you're like, whatever, man. Like, all right, I'll play one. We just won't play at the same time, right?
Sure.
But here, the options are a little bit limited. So you did. I want to look up the time on that because I guarantee it was no more than like 5 minutes.
Correct.
From one to the other.
Little
and it just worked out because so initially when I chose this commander, I was like, okay, everyone hates my Animar deck. Well, let me scratch that. Big Tuck hates my Animar deck.
Everyone who actually knows the game should hate every Animar deck.
And but we've talked about this. We don't have to get into it. But my Animar deck is not like other Animar decks. It's very different. But so initially when I saw this deck, I was like, okay, this seems kind of weird group huggy to where I'm going to be in the red zone with my commander every single attack I can. But then it's kind of deal or no deal. Hey, Squee McGee, do you want to draw potentially 5 cards and you'll just take 5 damage? And it's like, I can kind of use the cards right now. I'll take 5. Maybe. And so that's kind of initially in my head how I thought this deck was going to work. But now that I've built it, and just so you guys know, at the time of this recording, I think when this episode airs, it should be a week before Commander 20 actually launches May 15th, because it should be coming out May 8th.
Is that when we're supposed to be getting them?
When they launch. So I'm sure shipping, we probably get them the following week. Right. I actually built the deck 100% out of cards not in Commander 20 or Ikoria, except for Xyris. Mm-hmm. So it was one of those things, my play group's super cool to where it's like, hey, I've pre-ordered the deck. I have all the other cards. I can play it. It's not something to where, it's some super proxied out deck, kind of like...
Yeah, we'll get into that.
There's no reason to, because I have play sets of everything. You can shut your mouth. So it's nothing like Paco the Taco, though, where Dan's deck has 30 cards proxied, but it's fine.
Yeah, and I've seen him. I've seen another guy, friend of the show, Scooty Shuffles. We were running some games, and he just has all these cards. He printed out a bunch of them, but for a lot of them, he has them written on slips of paper. Or friend of the show, Aaron, didn't have an excuse because all these cards exist, and he just filled them out on piece of paper. So when you're seeing them online, you're just like, I just will trust that this is what you're saying it is.
That's too funny. So now that I've actually had the deck, I've played probably 7 games with it, and I think I've only lost 1.
Yeah.
So it's very, very good.
Mostly because of foolish threat assessment by other people in the cast, like hashtag Coward Dan, but that's okay.
I don't know. Remember the very first game you did play in this, Nathan counterspelled Echo of Eons, and then I just flashed it back and won the game. So
well, that was a misplay on mine because I should have gotten Perforos, but anyways.
Yeah. From a card perspective, it's CMC's 3-4-6, which I think is fine.
Yeah. And these
then,
colors, especially like because you have the green access, that helps so much. So
yeah. And then from a color distribution standpoint, I am a little heavy in the red. You know, from lands, I could probably cut out some, but it's one of those things to where even my Animar deck actually suffers from this, to where I don't have a whole lot of red, but then I get scared of cutting my red pips down because then it's like, what if I need them?
Yeah,
and you just can't get them.
I think it's fine, and like again, because you have the mana base for it, you probably won't really struggle with that, right? You can always go and fetch one of the other ones.
Sure.
So price wise, this is sitting at a gentleman's $2,000 in the middle. But if you cut out all the proxies that you have of it, of cards you do own, it would be like $200.
No, it wouldn't.
If you cut out all the duels, all the fetches, the mana drain, the Ristic Study. I know you own them, but I'm saying that if you wanted to build this,
you have to pause.
You could build this for like $200 or $300.
So you got to say, well, sure, if you just cut them from the deck, but actually I only have one fetch proxied in the deck. I only have one shock proxied in the deck, and Gaia's Cradle, and of course the 3 duels. I'm done buying duels. I have like 30 something duels. The Wheel of Fortune, that's an extra one I just had laying around. That's a real one.
The Mana Drain's proxied. The Ristic Study's proxied.
Yep.
So you could, even if you cut out some of the cards in here, if you don't own them or don't want to proxy them or however, I think that you could build this for $200 to $400.
Maybe. I mean, Perforos isn't cheap. Xenagos isn't cheap. Wheel of Fortune's not cheap.
Yeah, you can cut down, but again, like there's other cards that you could find that could do like that, just not as good, and have a deck that's similar. It won't be as explosive, obviously, right? But I'm just saying, if you didn't want to build a $2,000 version of this, you don't have to.
But you kind of do. All right, so let's get into this and talk about how a degenerate I've kind of made this deck. So we'll start with the Rampant Grain bill. The first card I want to talk about. So guys, kind of my mindset with this is I actually put a lot of my wheel effects in the grain, and the thought process behind that is just making a bunch of 1/1 snakes does not win the game when you have your commander. You have to have other stuff that we'll get into in the Yeast package to actually win it. But then secondly, I always want to start filtering through my deck so I can get to those cards a little bit quicker, and also help almost kind of mill out my opponents. Or, if Squee McGee's been holding on to a Wrath of God, for example, or a Crater Hoof because he got it early. It's like, okay, well, I'm constantly making you change your plans and see more of your deck. So the first one I want to talk about is actually one of the better cards in the deck, in my opinion, Korvoth's Fury.
Yeah!
Get it!
Brain sick.
This card's great, and it's only $1, which is real shocking. 4 colorless red. It's a rare from Battle Bond. It's a sorcery, and it's one of those great mechanics. Choose friends or foes. So for each player, choose a friend or foe. Each friend discards all cards from their hand, then draws that many cards plus 1. Korvoth's Fury deals damage to each foe equal to the number of cards in their hand.
Right.
The reason I like this is I actually have ways in the deck to possibly make all of my opponents have like 25 or 30 cards in hand. And so at that point, it's like, oh, foe, I win the game potentially. But if it's earlier in the game, it's still I can make everyone friend. We all wheel plus an extra one. Well, that's just an extra amount of snakes that I have. Oh, man, this card's so good.
Yeah, I agree. Those are my notes, especially. Like, I think when I played it, I think we had like 18 in our hand. So, I mean, like, that's enough to burn people out. You can use it just to pick cards away from people. Definitely has that mode. You can do it for like some people and others. Like, if someone's also playing a very greedy draw deck, right, and they have 20 cards in their hand, or they're trying to get into, Labman territory. You can bing him with that. I think it's really great. I mean, it's obviously kind of expensive at 5, but again, it's that modality that we've talked about where it's like, I think it's worth, if you compare this to, you know, I don't know if we probably won't talk about it because it's kind of road at this point, but like if you compare this to a Windfall, I think the 2 extra mana that come into it is well worth I think that's well worth the price of admission for this, right? Because this can't be a burn card. It's really good and like really kind of let you dictate what you want to do depending on the board, as opposed to just being like, we're all wheeling right now.
Yeah, and the reason I have it in a grain instead of like a yeast or a hop is because 90% of the time I'm going to be doing friends. So we're all going to be discarding, we're all going to be drawing cards, we're all getting new hands. But there is that just like kind of how we talk about how some cards with the modality can fit in multiple categories. This could be a yeast card because like you said, that game you had 18, and at that point I think I even had like 40 snakes. So what does an extra 60 snakes do for me that 40 doesn't? But doing 18 damage to each of you guys, then swinging with snakes, that could do so much more.
And again, like this deck does do a lot of attacking with the wider group, right? So if people are stuck behind a sphere of safety or a propaganda or something along those lines, then this is also a way to sneak in through that. Absolutely.
Well, what is your second grain card?
So this card used to be a lot more expensive, and I'm kind of glad to see it dropped. So I want to talk about Magus of the Wheel.
Oh, yeah.
So I think this card's really cool. This is the swap if you can't afford a Wheel of Fortune for the most part in these colors. So 2 colorless and a red for a 3/3 human wizard. It's a rare. It used to be like $8, I think, a long time ago.
Really?
Yeah, there was a while there where this was getting played all over the place, and I think it's only been printed twice. So colorless and a red, tap, sacrifice Magus of the Wheel. Each player discards their hand and then draws 7 cards. So again, it's just another redundant effect. The one thing that this card doesn't really have a lot of is digging stuff out of your graveyard. I've noticed. Like, do you have a card that can get you? Do you have like a Eternal Witness or?
Nope. I mean, technically. You know, a card I referenced earlier, and I'll be talking about it later in the hot profile, Echo Vions, that kind of gets the stuff back, and we'll get more into that. But no, for the most part, I actually don't care. Like, even when I was goldfishing the deck, and there would be times to where, I kid you not, man, I'd have Magus on the field, but then I'd have like 2 or 3 other wheel effects in my hand. I don't even feel bad about that. It's just like, who cares? Like, I just want to get through this deck as quick as possible.
And again, like, it can be a blocker, right? It blocks a zombie. You can have it sit there. No one's there's so many other threats in this deck. No one's probably going to do anything about him. So it's something that can sit there. The funniest thing, I can't remember if I talked about on this podcast or IRL, but the joke text someone made on this was, I'll take an A, and it's like the Aether, like the A with the E, and it was Giant Ballard. So I was like, okay, that's pretty clever.
That is pretty funny.
Magus of the Wheel's cool. Kind of gives you that budget-friendly option. Can be a creature if you need to swing in with it. So always good to have one lying around.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about it is it, does have to tap to sacrifice itself. You have to wait a turn. But, I mean, small potato complaints. So the next card I wanted to talk about is a commander that actually is very heavily played. Edric, Spymaster of Trest.
Oh, it's a classic.
Yeah, colorless Simic, that's green and blue. He's a legendary creature, elf rogue, 2/2. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may draw a card. The reason I like this card in the deck is if for some reason, and the reason it's a grain is because it is a May effect, so your opponents don't have to draw. But I would think when you guys are swinging around, it almost operates like the curses, to where, hey, if you attack this opponent, I get a treasure and you get a treasure. And it's like, okay, well, you can attack and you could choose to maybe just draw 2 cards and I get 2 snakes. But
or just one if you only need it, right?
Yeah. So you kind of get that flexibility, and your opponents. It gives the illusion of control.
Yeah. No, that's the illusion. It's just like when I go on vacation with my parents. It's just the illusion of choice.
Exactly.
Either way, you're kind of screwed. But
then, from my perspective, I could potentially swing in with 40 snakes. 10 of them get blocked. I'm going to draw 30 cards.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
He's a classic. This is my Simic commander, and he's just a great card. So great politic card. Nothing wrong there.
Yep. So what is your last grain card.
So this is also it can be a commander. I don't know if I've ever seen, or I feel like I have seen one before or heard about it. So I want to talk about Nin the Paint Artist.
Oh yeah!
So this card is so cool, and it's a really clever inclusion here. So I'll give you props on that. So so blue red. It's a Vindelican Wizard, legendary creature, 1/1. So it's the ability on it's kind of weird. So it's X and is it? So X blue red. Tap it. Nin deals damage. X damage to target creature. That creature's controller draws X cards, right? So like I can start to see this being used in a bunch of different ways in this deck. And one of them, the narrowest way is you pick off another person's creature and then they draw cards.
Sure.
But the trick is you can still deal 10 damage to Llanowar Elves and then they still have to draw 10 cards.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a way to dictate that around. A lot of people would see that as like a disadvantage potentially, right? But in this deck, it's going to get you those little guys out. And in the rare case, if you need to draw cards, which again doesn't really seem to be a problem here because you have everything under the books to do it with, you can always just deal 10 damage to one of your own snake tokens, right? Or one of your other creatures that's done its purpose, draw 10, and then maybe a couple of your other effects have different things that could happen, dealing damage, that sort of thing. Get your hand big, and then you can do one of the wheel effects, bin it, everyone else has to draw cards up to that much, right? Then you get a bunch more stakes, so on and so forth. So I think it's really, and it's a 2-drop, right? So you can have it down early. Just does a lot of work.
Yeah, it's one of those cards to where I would honestly put this in a Magus of the Wheel category, to where if they're on the battlefield and someone politicked for someone to use a board wipe or targeted removal to get rid of them, I actually don't care.
Yeah, I totally agree,
It's more of a feel bad if it happens to an actual sorcery wheel effect, just because I'm literally like, okay, well, that counter spell, that just got rid of that or whatever. Creature, I don't know. It doesn't hurt me as much. But this actually was a last-minute addition to the deck because I was going through my legendary binder, putting some cards back, and I saw it, and I was like, wait a minute. That seems like some trickery there.
There could be some tech there.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing about our local play group is more people are actually starting to play Stuffy Doll than ever before. So sure, you picked someone else, I'll deal 20 to that person takes 20, you're drawing 20 cards, I'm making 20 snakes, and the thing that's great about this is sometimes I've seen in this deck to where I've been doing my rigmarole, this card will be down earlier, it's coming back to my turn, and then the blue player will purposely leave up mana to do a counter spell because it's like, we cannot let him wheel or he will win the game. Well, with this, unless they have a disallow type of effect, I'm doing it anyways. It kind of gives me that way around counter magic, because it's like, are you going to waste your counter spell on this early in the game, or is it just going to sit there and then you're going to waste a targeted removal, which at that point, like, Big Tuck had kind of alluded earlier, should probably do it to the Perforos or get rid of Xyris instead of wasting it on one of these utility things.
Totally agree. And the fact that, like, if there is something that's indestructible, also a great way just to dump mana in, right? Like if someone did the Darksteel mutation on a creature, you could just be like, all right, well, I'm going to deal 20 damage to that, you draw 20 cards, and I'll get 20 slithers, and then I'll untap, or however it turns out.
Yep, absolutely. Well, the last grain I want to talk about is a boring ramp card, but I think in this type of a deck, it's really needed, and it's something that if you're going to build a 3-color or more deck, you need the card in there. We're talking Farseek.
Oh, sure. So, yeah, it's super good.
Farseek, colorless green. Search your library for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain card. Put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. So the reason I just wanted to highlight this one, especially if you're going to go the budget route, you still need those dual lands. And there are cheaper options, but a lot of times they have the conditions of enter the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basics.
Right, or if it comes from your hand, or if it cycles or whatever, right?
Sure. Yeah. And the reason I think it's going to be huge for this is because in Ikoria, they are printing those Triome lands.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Which actually, talking about it earlier, I think I may cut a mountain for a Triome land because this could go get it. It's going to put it to the battlefield tapped anyway, so I don't feel bad that's going to enter the battlefield
there's no downside there,
Exactly. And the thing that I like about this is I have the shocks in here, so it's like, okay, well, I don't want to waste a traditional fetch land on a shock and then have to shock myself for 2 or just put it in the battlefield tapped. This can go do it. And color fixing and getting ramp quick, because your commander does cost 5. It's not like he's cheap. And the goal of the deck is you need him out turn 3, 4 at the latest. If you're hitting him on curve curve at 5, you're already behind the 8.
Yeah, you're going to be behind and not be as explosive. So, yeah, I completely agree.
Cool. Well, that's going to wrap up the random grain bill. Now we're going to head over to the board state and hot profile. Big Tuck, where do you want to start?
Okay, so I want to start with one. I will do that one last, actually. So I'm going to do the one that I'm going to go ahead and dislocate my shoulder and pat myself on the back for. So as soon as we started talking about this, I was like, oh, you should go get this card. And then there's some back and forth, and then it actually got read, and we realized it's a slam dunk. So we're talking Cassetto Orochi Archmage.
Yep.
Is this one yours too?
Nope. It's so good, though.
You coward. Okay, so colorless and Simic. Colorless, that's green-blue for legendary creature Snake. Wizard. He's also a mythic. So pretty straightforward. It's Simic, so blue-green. Target creature can't be blocked this turn.
Yep.
Seems pretty good.
Seems
if that
great.
creature is a snake, it gets +2/+2 till end of turn. Booyah. So it turns your commander into a 5/7 for 2 that can't be blocked. So again, if you're going to try to wheel and deal with people, now you don't even have to. And you can just be like, all right, well, I want you to draw more cards, or you to draw more cards, or you're close to death, so I'm just going to chip away at you. And the thing that's great about it is the ability is not tapped or anything.
Yep.
So you can dump as much mana as you want into this. So if it is at the point where you're like somehow out of cards and you have this and your commander out in whatever reality that exists in, like someone made you discard your hand or something, you can just spend your mana, pump your commander up, and then swing in, draw a bunch of cards, and go from there.
Honestly, so I've done this before. I actually use that if I'm at that point to just kill you off command damage.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because you know what? They've probably taken that deal or no deal once or twice earlier in the game. So say they're at 6, and it's like, okay, 9, I need to do this however many times, 5 times, 6 times. Sure, I'll pump 10 or 12 into them, just kill you.
Unblockable, and come right in. So
it works for me.
As soon as you start talking about this, and I think we were doing some game, I was like, oh, you should go get this card. So I had to mention it.
Yeah, and I remember you talking about it because it's like that's gonna spike if you don't get it now. Which the funny thing, guys, is the reason we're talking about this episode now is unless they go off the box things, we know that our rivals over at the Command Zone will probably, I feel like Josh Lee Kwai will probably play Xyris as the commander of choice, and then that card will probably spike in price. So hey,
of course,
coming to you. It's coming a week early. Go buy one.
Also, speaking of coming, I'm coming for you, Jimmy. But yes,
I thought you were going a completely different direction with that.
All right, let's all grow.
Hashtag producer squeak.
We can all grow up on that. So, anyways, I just want to get that one out of the way. So, what was your first one?
So my first one. It's once again some kind of cool tech, like Nen the Paint Artist is one of my 2 counter spells. We're talking Arcane Denial.
Yeah.
So this is a colorless blue instant counter target spell. Its controller may draw up to 2 cards at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. You draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. Hold on, what that says is 2 mana, counter target spell. I get 2 snakes and a card.
Absolutely.
It's so good.
And honestly, like I think this card is played a lot, and I think it's arguably better than Counterspell in 3-color decks because it's not blue, and it's just a non-conditional counter, right? Like, sure, they get 2 cards, but it replaces itself,
sure,
right? So you also get value out of it, and it's not like something where they have to pay mana or can do something else and counter it, right? So it's less blue mana, does the same kind of thing. Works great in this deck, works great in decks that care about drawing cards and all that jazz. I don't have one of these in my Nekuzar because I'm an idiot, so that will be coming up shortly.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Arcane Denial is I would actually say this is a blue staple over Counterspell unless you're playing CEDH. That's the only format in EDH that I would say you would not want to do an Arcane Denial because of the fact you don't want to give your opponents 2 cards.
I would say that it is. I would also have the same argument for mono blue because the land base doesn't matter, and it's just a hard counterspell to get no draw. So I would run both, but
you'd run both in that.
I would run absolutely, yeah. Like I would run both. If I run counterspell because I have a gazillion copies of it because I've been playing for so long.
Sure.
So, but like I would run this and counterspell in a monocolor or 2-color deck. Once you start edging into those 3rd colors, this one I think takes the cake.
Awesome. Well, hey, what's your second hop?
Okay, so I am also going to be talking about another creature, which I think we talked about, and this is definitely part of the package of the deck that I like. So we are talking about Shashiro, the Anointed. So it's 4 colorless and green. It's a legendary creature, Snake Monk. It's a rare, because I don't think they had Mythics in Kamigawa. Horrible set, but this set is great for snakes. So other snakes you control get +2/+2. And then whenever a snake you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Again, you're going to have piles of snakes. This pumps them up. It's a little expensive, but again, I've seen you race out land so fast in this deck. It's totally okay. Pumps up your commander. This does everything that you want in this deck. So the only thing that sucks is if you have it by itself, it kind of doesn't do a ton except maybe draw you a card, right?
Yeah.
But again, like the way the deck is built, since it is so top down, you are going to have snake tokens from left over from something, right?
Sure.
So going from a 1/1 to a 3/3 is huge, right? I mean, that's such a big damage swing, especially when you have piles of them. And then you can start drawing cards, rebuilding your hand, which will let you rebuild your board, get your commander back out, find the other things that you need to win, and take it home from there.
Yeah, this is actually one that I've toyed around cutting.
Sure.
Just because it costs 6.
It is expensive. It's really expensive.
I'll tell you this. Out of the 7 games that I've played, 6 that I've won, I've never swung with a snake token. Not a single one.
What?
And so, yeah, I know. It's
Really?
weird. I've won off of all the other ways that the deck wins.
Okay.
Never won off of snake tokens. And so I usually leave them back as blockers.
Right.
So that way someone can't just come in and kill me.
And slam you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's...
Would you say you sit tight with your
I do sit tight with
And
the
it's
tokens.
kind of a sit and tight deck.
But, Sashiro, it's just, I feel bad cutting it because I actually, guys, went out there and bought all the legendary snakes, bought all the good snakes, and I've just been cutting them, whittling it down to where I have no snakes in the deck other than maybe Cassetto and one other snake that may or may not get talked about. But I think overall, if you wanted to build Xyris as a gold wide, instead of it being a wheel deck punishment from the wheel, and it's going to be, hey, you guys are just gonna,
focus more on tokens,
Yeah, like more the Howling Minds of the world, where, hey, you're just gonna get to draw extra cards. I'm not necessarily making you wheel, and I may get a few snakes each rotation, and you want to go wide. Then I do think Sashiro makes a whole lot of sense. But I think if you go more that wheel side of the house, then he's maybe a luxury that could be cut to make it a little bit more streamlined.
Sure, and I think you bring up a good point where like this deck kind of. You're starting to. I think when you first built this, you probably built it to do all 3 abilities, right? Like I want to see how the tokens play. I want to see if I can attack with them. I want to see if my commander can start swinging through.
Sure,
right, that sort of things. And I'm sure as you continue to play it, you'll find the way that you'll like to do it. I'm guessing it is going to end up being more of that wheel burnout, that sort of way. But but
100% agree.
I still think it's sweet. I can't believe this card's $7, but that's because Kamigawa was garbage. And just definitely wanted to bring it up while we could.
All right. Well, the next card I want to talk about is a amazing card that definitely did some work in the one game that Big Tuck played in because it actually won me the game. But I have it in my hops category for another particular reason. We're talking Echo of Eons.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a Modern Horizons. I get it. It's Modern Horizons.
Oh yeah, this is another one you ripped out of one of those 17,000 packs you bought from there. So
4 colorless,
right in. Found
4 colorless blue sorcery. It's a mythic, and it says each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, then draws 7 cards, and then it does have flashback for 2 colorless blue. Yeah. The reason I have it in the deck is because if people are getting wise to my game and removing my commander, now he costs like 10 or 12. Well, that's probably a bad example. Let's just say they counterspelled Wheel of Fortune and some other cards. And
when you wheeled before, you didn't have the other pieces out that you needed.
Yeah,
you might have wheeled this one by accident or whatever.
Sure. Right? It's just basically, man, I need to get my graveyard back into my library, and I do not care if my opponents do as well.
Right.
I can just pay 3 mana and go ahead and do it. The flip side, once again, this kind of with the modality of it, also operates as a yeast, because in the game that I referenced with Big Tuck and Nathan and who else was in that? Dan?
I think it was just the 3 of us. I think
just the 3 of us?
Yeah, I think we're waiting for another person to jump on.
And what ended up happening was Nathan saved up his counter magic, countered the spell because I was going to win the game if they each drew 7. But then it's like, okay, I got 3 mana left over. I'll flash it back. And it was like, well, poop. So
poop indeed. It was a real pooper.
Well, what is your last hop?
All right, so you guys might notice a subtle theme in my 3 choices. So I also want to talk about another one from the Kamigawa block. This one, I believe, is from Saviors. We're talking Kasha Tribe Elite.
Yeah, this is one that will stay in the deck no matter what, because this is great.
Yeah, colorless, green, Snake Warrior. It's a snake. 2/3. Legendary snakes you control can't be the target of spells or abilities, and the rest of this is meaningless, but that's fine. Whenever it deals combat damage to a creature, tap that creature, and if it doesn't untap during its controller's next upkeep. So
basically 3 mana, my commander has Shroud.
Right, and like the only way people probably aren't going to try to pick this off unless they're smart. It also gives Cassetto, which is also, like we said, just complete house in this deck. Also gives him the ability to have Shroud too, right? It's a super fringe case.
That is a non-bow though, because if you have Cassetto out and your commander, you can't use Cassetto's ability because it's target. Oh shit!
Is it? It is Shroud. Damn, that sucks. Well, regardless, if someone does kill this, then you can use Cassetto, bump it back up if you have him out.
Sure.
So again, like I think this is fine. I just liked it because it does deal with 3 other cards in the deck, which depending on what strategy you're going with, can be huge. If you start cutting those out, then this, I don't know. I think there's better ways to give your commander Shroud for 3 that are a little less fragile. But it is a snake, plays into other snake strategies, and I'm all about that because that's what I want in the deck.
Here's how I'd argue that, though, and here's why I'm leaving it in here. It's 3 mana to give it Shroud. Sure, you could do another equipment to do that, but a board wipe still gets rid of it. Sure. If you have Kashi out, a board wipe still gets rid of them both, which would have been the same thing with the equipment, but then I kind of force their hand, or what are they going to do, double targeted removal? Probably not.
Sure.
And, you know, I'm never worried in this deck about opponent or people making me sacrifice creatures, because I always have piles of snakes, so I'll just sacrifice them. So, I mean, I'm okay with them doing a board wipe to get rid of it, because maybe that does force their hand. But as we see in the Yeast section, there are ways that the creatures do get big, just naturally through other pump effects. So it could be that Kashi's second ability, maybe he's only a 4 or a 5, but maybe that's enough to maybe keep your other commander tapped down because you're trying to kill me or get to a planeswalker. Which will segue into my last one.
Go ahead.
You know I had to talk about a planeswalker.
It's only one in the deck, is it not?
No. I got 2 in here.
Oh.
I have the Royal Scions. So, colorless is it? Legendary Planeswalker, Will and Rowan. It's a mythic. Once again,
it's not
from
a snake.
Once again from that trash set, Throne of Eldraine. Garbage.
It is exciting to see this card drop in price to only $5 because it was like 12.
Real expensive, so it has 3 effects. +1, draw a card, discard a card. Seems kind of like what my deck wants to do. Get through the deck.
Perfect.
Oh, wait. Its second one is also a plus ability. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains first strike and trample until end of turn.
It's awesome.
So that just makes my commander a 5/5 with trample. So sure, you know, friend of the cast Duff also has a Tallran deck. Okay, you have 2/2/2 Drakes. I'll swing into that.
Yeah, I'll
get through
I
one.
don't care.
And then the last one is inconsequential, to be honest. -8, draw 4 cards. When you do, the Royal Scions deals damage to target equal to the number of cards in your hand. Sure, I guess super fringe case that could end up doming someone depending on how many cards I have in hand. But it's really in here just to give my commander trample and the +2.
Yeah, and I think the fact that it has an innocuous ultimate to some extent, it means it probably won't be targeted as much, right? Like people aren't going to be trying to hammer through damage just to keep it down a couple, right? I think they'll probably have other threats to go with. I think this card, I like this card a lot, and the thing I don't love about it in a lot of decks is a lot of the wheeling decks don't have any creatures that are attacking, right? Like Locust God, Nekazar, that sort of thing. You're not really going into the red zone with them, whereas this one, like that's another strategy that you have with it of dealing that commander damage, pushing stuff through, starting to draw other cards, all that good stuff. So yeah, no, I think it's awesome. I love the fact it's only $5 now. It's a 3-drop, so it can start helping you filter through your deck. Start discarding lands if you don't need them. Just does everything that this deck wants to do.
100%, 100%. Well, that's going to wrap up the hot profile, guys. Now we're going to head over to how this deck will take the game home. I'm going to start it off with a card that initially I didn't think was going to be good for the deck, but after counting that I have 16 artifacts in the deck, it actually is a powerhouse. All right, 1, 2, 3. Molten Sight, yes. All right.
So before we get into this, I had the exact same thing. I was like, okay, this card's good, but I'm not seeing too many artifacts. And then I went and like put it back to the normal view, and I was like, oh yeah, you got plenty.
Yeah. So Molten Sight, guys, is a colorless red sorcery. $1.99 from Conspiracy.
Scars of Mirrodin.
Damn. And Big Tuck, why don't you read what it actually does?
Yeah, so each player shuffles a card from his or her hand into his or her library, then draws that many cards. So it's one-sided, but still very good. Right? It's not like the Windfall, if you will. But then it also has another ability stacked on it, Metalcraft. If you control 3 or more artifacts, Molten Psyche deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of cards that player has drawn this turn. Oof. And the fact it's only 3 mana, like you could easily stack this like Echo of Aeons from your graveyard, right? Do that. Okay, that's 7. Whatever else. You had like
So the trick to it, though, is that since it's sorcery speed,
right,
it's one of those to where its Metalcraft is more relevant when you wield and you drew into it. That's where it's actually going to be more relevant, because you can't actually stack anything because nothing's at instant speed, because I don't have an Ori or anything like that.
Stack them up. No, I hear you.
But in my mind, it's okay. The low end, we're doing like a one-sided Windfall, so I'll probably get 4 to 10 snakes somewhere in there. But the top end is like, whoa, I could possibly kill everyone that rotation.
And again, if you get your snake up to dealing some damage there, right? Like you hit someone for 5 or whatever the case may be with that. They drew 5 cards. They drew 5 cards off that. You drew 5 cards off that, right? Yep. Then of those cards you draw, you get this. Then we'll just windmill slam it. It's got a lot, and especially that it's only 3 mana. Like and even if you have to in a pinch just to try to find an answer, it's still a 3 mana wheel, right? Like,
well, and look at it this way. You've talked about how I build decks top down, where it really needs the commander to kind of work. This card actually doesn't need anything.
Yeah,
if it's gotten to the point and you're doing the wheel into a wheel and it's later in the game, it could just be that you don't even really have a board. You are digging for an answer, and it just so happens on your second or third wheel, it's like, oh, I win the cave.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you wheel this into like a Corvus Fury or something along those lines, right? Like there's just a lot of utility for it. And again, it's only 3 mana and $2. So does exactly what this deck is trying to do.
All right. Well, what is your first East card?
So we talked about how you really need the commander, but I think you have a few cards in here that can very well act as a backup commander, even with that. And I think one of the premier ones you have is my boy. He's a little skittery boy. He likes to crawl around. We're talking Psychosis Crawler. So this card is absurd. 5 colorless for an artifact creature horror. All relevant creature types in this deck. Its power and toughness is equal to the number of cards in your hand, which again is likely not going to be insignificant, because you're going to have at least 7. And if it's later in your turn, right, you could have a lot more than that. So this is another way to go. But more importantly, whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses a life, right?
Yep.
So this is definitely this can win you the game in and of itself, right? Like in my Nekazar deck, this has won me the game in there, just because you're wheeling through your own deck, and it's drips and drabs, right? It's here's and there's. They're going to be using the removal, and unless you're getting super greedy, I would almost hold on to this until you kind of have like your thing set up, so that even if your commander does get killed, you have this in your back pocket to be able to play it and then start burning people out.
Well, so here's the only thing that you have to think of with a mindset like that. You can't really sandbag cards in this deck because you're wheeling so much.
I keep forgetting you just keep going. So
you just keep going.
You play it and then you wheel.
So I will say this card actually won me the game. I think it was the second game I ever played. It's a great card. I know it's getting greedy. I do wish though it was whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life.
That's absurd. I thought you were gonna say you wish it cost 3, which is also absurd. I think it's perfectly fair. I think it's very fairly casted. It's very strong. And like I got in an argument with this a long time ago about when I wheeled, and they're like, "Well, you don't have any cards in your hand." I'm like, "No, that's while the spell's on the stack. Then when it resolves, then I have all this." So nice try, comma, ding dong. So yeah, like I said, you really want your commander to come out. Right? Like you really want him on the battlefield for all of his abilities. But if you don't, this does a very good job of still pushing in damage, still winning the game for you.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. Well, my second card, Big Tuck already gave it away. So I'm going to say a very lacklustery Windfall.
Yeah.
So it's 2 colorless blue sorcery, $3.70.
It's just played all over the place, right? Like it's like I've noticed most wheel decks run red and something else, right? So a lot of them, like Nekuzar, Locust God, those are the 2 I can think of at the top of my head. They both run blue, right? And it's like I can't go spend $2 on a Windfall that hasn't been printed that much. I think it's been mostly in commander sets. I'm not going to go spend $150 on a Wheel of Fortune or something absurd like that, maybe more. So I think it slots into that very well.
Speaking of Wheel of Fortune, I did want to point this out. Big Tuck had told me that Aaron had kind of advised him to go into your TCG player, go to your collection, and then sort by price. So I did that, and I saw that Wheel of Fortune is like $150 or something like that. And I was curious how much I spent for Wheel of Fortune. I bought it in 2016. Guess how much I spent for Wheel of Fortune?
$70.
$25.
What? Damn.
Yeah. I know.
That's pretty
great.
sick. But you got another one from Missouri MTG or whatever, right?
I got 3 of them.
Easy enough.
Yep. So Windfall, guys, the reason that this card is such a powerhouse. Did I even read the card?
I don't think you did.
Yeah, all right. Sorry, guys. I'm running on that very little sleep, and I'm all drugged up.
You still got the whatever sleepy medicine in your brain.
Yeah. Each player discards his or her hand and draws cards equal to the greatest number of a player discarded this way. So the reason this is a powerhouse in this deck is you swing with. This is usually a second main phase card. Swing with Xyris. Make your opponent, maybe whoever had the most cards. Usually I'm going to have the most cards, but maybe if someone else has more. Make them draw a bunch of cards. Then you cast Windfall. So, okay, I hit them for a bare minimum 3, made 3 snakes, I drew 3 cards. I'm at 10. Well, now I'm going to cast Windfall. Everyone's going to draw 9. That's going to produce 27 snakes on top of me getting 9 cards. This card single-handedly can win the game with one other piece on the board.
Right.
And if you think about it, I mean, just in this Yeast section, I got 12 different cards in my Yeast package out of the 17 that would love to have 20-something snakes.
Yes. I totally agree with that. It's an all-star, very good spell, especially in this one. It's the highest that you're going to do. And like when I saw it, I think we all binned and drew 18 or something absurd like that. So it's awesome.
So what is your next Yeast card?
So this is one that obviously belongs in this deck. It's kind of something that's also kind of rote to talk about because any deck that wants this card, it's immediately good in. So we're talking about the puzzle box. So
hey, me too.
Yeah.
I've seen this card get played in this deck now 5 of the 7 games, and it is wrecked house every time.
It's just like it's the Fairies Puzzle Box is 4 colors for an artifact. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player puts the cards in his or her hand on the bottom of the library, then draws that many cards, and then you draw another card after that, right? So the thing that's crazy about this is like every deck that this is put in, it's like one of the best cards in the deck. Right? Yep. Like I said, Nekuzar, Locust Guard, Argent of the Shifting Flames, like any of those things that care about people drawing cards, including yourself, this does so much work in. And especially, it's kind of like, it also really alters, we've talked before about cards when they come out, they completely alter the rest of the game and they turn it into something that's completely different, right? Yeah. And this is one of those where like, it kind of you're forcing everyone into the same decisions that you have to make where as soon as you wheel, right, you don't know what's left, right? So you're like, I have these cards in my hand and I know I'm not going to have them in the end of this turn, maybe later, right? So let's run it out. Now, make sure I cast that Psychosis Crawler. Yep. Even if it's not the right time, right? Like make sure like the things, if I want this card in the hand, I have to play it now, even if it's badly sequenced or however, right? Because it's going to be gone. Because then you Windfall, then you do whatever. Yep. This forces everyone to play like that because they know that if they're just going to sit on something, they're just going to lose it, right? So it kind of evens the playing field on that. Again, drawing 7 cards or 6 cards, whatever, getting all the snakes, getting all the other triggers, just insane.
Yeah, the thing that I've really enjoyed about it is I play it on my turn, and unless someone has a counter spell, no one can react to it for the most part. Yeah, sure, you can have a Croson Grip, something like that, disenchant, sure. But outside of that, the Teferi's Puzzle Box in itself is not the issue. It's what Xyris gets from the puzzle box that's the issue. And the reason I say that is because I play it on my turn, I immediately get the value, because even if, say, it went to Big Tuck and he's like, oh man, I got a Wrath of God, I got to get rid of that thing. Wait, I won't even have it in my hand. It's going to the bottom, and now I got to guesswork off the top. Exactly. And then you're exactly right. It's all about I gotta do it now. There is no waiting. Correct. Oh, maybe I want to Aetherize or something or Aether Spouts, something to that effect. And then every opponent is doing that, and so it actually makes the game easier on this deck, because now I don't have to worry about in my head, oh, they drew a card and passed. Oh man, what are they going to do? I mean, they're going to do it,
right?
They're going to do it on my turn. Right. There is no sandbagging it until their next turn. So, yeah, great card, and of course, it's a foil from Mystery Boosters.
Wait, did you crack that?
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, it's sweet. And so it'll go down in price. Right now it's $8, but that'll go down. It'll probably level around 5. So you have no excuse, even if you're budget friendly out there when you're running your wheel decks.
All right, guys. Well, that'll wrap up the yeast package. Now we're gonna head over to Spice. Big Tuck. We had 5 options. What'd you pick?
So you know what I picked.
Oh, you picked the pit?
Oh, gotta pick the pit. Did you pick the pit?
Of course not.
What? No, you gotta go with the pit. So you gotta go with the snake pit. So this is a 36-cent uncommon from Mercadian Masquerades. 3 colorless and a green. Whenever the player plays a blue or black spell, you may put a 1/1 green snake token into play. I want this to be snake tribal, so come hell or high water, this is one of the probably better ways to do it.
You know what's funny? This won me the game.
No way,
First
really?
game I ever played. Yep. Someone was at 1 life. I had this out, and I was about to do something that was going to kill them. And they're like, okay, well, I'm going to counterspell that. And it's like, well, I'm going to make a snake and then you die. Your counterspell fizzles.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was very torn about this card. Yeah. The blue or black, that seems very conditional, but after talking with friend of the cast, Will, he kind of made the astute point that we have a lot of blue and black in our play group. Well, so it's gonna happen more often than not.
I think by and large, people like playing black for the removal, and it's cool metal cards, right? And blue is just such a powerhouse. I think probably the best color in EDH, just for how broad it is and all the answer it has, right? And they pair so nicely with so many things. So even if there's I think we've talked about this before, there's really not that many monocolored decks in our play group. Right, it's kind of it's pretty sparse. So there is going to be someone who's going to play a blue black spell or a blue or black deck, maybe more, right? And if they cast if they're playing, my vampire deck, you'll get 2, right? No, so if they cast a 2-color card, like a blue black card, like a Mind's Funeral or something, do you get 1 or 2?
1,
because it's just that goes on the stack. It sees that's a blue or black, and you get 1.
Yeah.
So even then, though, there's so many cards where it's white black, blue black, right? Yeah. Blue red, even in this deck. So I'm kind of surprised. I'm happy and I'm proud of you that you are not cutting it, or are you?
No, I think I'm gonna keep it.
Yeah. So that's why I like it. And again, if you keep. I like the idea of having the go wide as kind of a backup plan, just in case something goes south.
Sure.
And I think this is another one that feeds into that.
Well, and I think normally I probably would cut it, but like I said, that game won. A, it won me the game, but then B, I think that game it made 11 snakes, 12 snakes.
There you go.
And I think I had Psychosis Crawler out at the time. Yeah. So, yeah, or no, not I had Perforos out at the time. Right. So again, it was just all right.
Damage.
Yep. All right.
Which one are you going with?
So this was another last-minute addition, but I do want to give just a special short shout-out. Obviously, this whole deck, we've talked about ETB. You know, we didn't have a lot of ETB, like Perforos, Impact Trimmers, where it's dealing damage to everyone. You know, we got the Beastmaster Ascensions of the world. But the one thing that, in my mind, I kind of feel like could happen in the deck, it hasn't happened yet, is I feel like I could deck myself. So there is a Labman and a Jace in here.
Yep.
They're part of the spice package because I don't know how realistic that's going to be, but I do have a fear of just drawing out my deck.
Yeah, I think it's a real one, right? Especially if you like have a huge grip and then you windfall and you're starting to get close to it, right? Like, if you keep drawing wheel spells, if you keep dealing damage to their commander, it's like a lot of these you don't even have a choice, right? But you need to do them anyways just to push the deck through and get to do what it wants, right?
Absolutely. But the card I wanted to specifically talk about was a last minute addition, and it's because I started to notice that I was wheeling regardless of what's in my hand. We're talking about Anger.
Yeah.
So Anger's 3 colorless red. It's an incarnation, 2/2, and it has haste. But it also says as long as Anger's in your graveyard and you control a mountain, creatures you control have haste. I don't. It's the reason it's a spice is because most of the time, I'm not going to get the army of snakes until second main phase. So therefore, I can't attack with them to have, unless I wheel in the first main phase, maybe. But that's a very fringe thing. Usually, it's I'm hitting with Xyris, then I'm wheeling. So it's not so much there, but since I am wheeling so much, that's a card that I'm happy to pitch to the graveyard, kind of like Echo of Eons. And then Xyris has haste. And that actually helped out, I think, in the game that I was playing with you this last 40 Life and a Dash, because you guys kept getting rid of Xyris. I bend Anger, and then I could just play him and swing on the turn, opposed to having to wait for the rotation. So and I think it fits, but it kind of doesn't.
And I agree with you, because you could also make the same argument for Wonder that gives, if it's in your graveyard, it gives all your things flying, right? So I think that's I think that's where the way that you could look at this deck, if you want to run it more token based, then and that's how you want to win, right? If you want to it's going to be tokens and in combat with tokens, then this card's great. Wonder's great. Having another thing that gives haste to everything would be awesome too, because then you can wheel and swing in, right?
Sure.
But again, that's one of the challenges of building this, where it's how far do you want to spread yourself? How thin do you want to spread yourself on all these different play styles, right?
Yeah.
And I think having having Anger in here kind of is a good middle ground for that, right? Where you're this is a card that's probably gonna get discarded, and if I do, boo-hoo, right? But in the pinch that I need it, this is where in this deck, the way that you built it, if you have this army, if no one has a response, you can wheel, swing in for the kill with the haste, and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, well, that's going to wrap up the spice package. Now we're going to head over to the bottle capping. And a reminder, these are going to be big Texanized cuts and recommendations to the deck that are under $5, under 50, and a personal recommendation that has no budget. The only restriction is no mana-only lands. And, of course, it is difficult since I literally just built the deck and did all the research. But let's start off with my under 5. I'm going to cut a card that people try to convince me beforehand don't put in the deck. And now that I've played it enough, I do agree that it probably doesn't fit. It fits, but it's risky. We're talking Pandemonium.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's 3 colorless red enchantment. It's $1.30, and the reason I'm going to cut it, guys, is because it says whenever a creature comes into play, that creature's controller may have it deal damage to its power to target creature or player of his or her choice. In my mind, I put this in here because I kind of looked at this as a Triumph of the Hordes type card. I only play it when I'm ready to drop 18 snakes, 20 snakes, and then that way I can do it. But there's enough token generation in our play group that people could do at instant speed that I think even if I try to go that route, they're like, aha, with your spell on the stack, I'm going to kill Xyris and he's going to die.
Right.
So I'm going to take it, though, for a card that I'm really surprised I didn't put in the deck to start. You know it. We're talking Fevered Visions.
Oh, yeah. This is sweet.
Colorless, is it?
You also have a very interesting history with this card, if you remember correctly.
I do not.
We'll read it, and I'll remind you of it. It was a funny one.
Colorless is it, blue-red enchantment, 59 cents, and it says at the beginning of each player's instep, that player draws a card. So therefore, I'm making snakes, doing my thing. If that player is an opponent and has 4 or more cards in hand, Fevered Vision deals 2 damage to him or her, which my opponent should always have more than 4 cards in hand.
Yes.
So what's the history with this card and me?
So we were playing a deck, and you were playing your CEDH deck, and you were playing Mana Crypt, and it got you for like the Mana Crypt. You got like tails on every single one of them almost.
Oh.
So your life was really low, and then we were playing with Australian Alex, or AA, if you will, no AA Ron, and he had this out, and then you kept taking turns digging yourself with the Mana Crypt, and then this killed you because you took too many turns in a row, and you had no answers or no responses. It was insane.
Yeah, that sounds like me.
We all have fond memories of that one.
But yeah, this kind of does a couple things. A, it's one-sided for the damage. Yep. B, it feeds my commander, which that's the strategy I'm going. People are drawing cards. And C, it lowers my CMC by 1.
Sure. No, it works out for me. Believe it.
All right. Well, what is your under 5 cut and add?
So we talked about this briefly yesterday, and I think you're right. So I'm actually going to cut Renata Called to the Hunt.
What?
So Renata,
she did so much work,
right? But I'll get to it. So Renata Called to the Hunt is 2 colorless green, a legendary enchantment creature, demigod, brand new hot off the presses. Its power is equal to your devotion to greed. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with additional 1/1 counter on it, right? So you already have another effect in this. I know you, because it's tuned and you thought about it, you have a lot of redundancy in here, which I think is good. But you also made mention that you're not winning in the red zone, right? Like you're not you've talked about how every game where you've tried to attack with the creatures is the ones that you lose, right? So or the one that you lost. So I'm guessing the way that this is going is that the creatures entering the battlefield is more important to you than them attacking.
Okay.
Right? So I'm going to cut this for a card. I was actually kind of shocked you didn't have it in here. So we're going to cut this for one of my favorite wheels of all time, Jace's Archivist. So colorless blue for a creature of Undalkin Wizard. It's $2 now for 2/2. Colorless, tap it. Each player windfalls pretty much. Each player discards his or her hand, then draws cards equal to the number of cards a player discard this way. So
I looked at that card when I was doing my cuts, and I almost feel like I would just swap it for Magus of the Wheel, because once again it's that whole slow.
Right, I agree with you. And this one, I think this is better than Magus, right? Because you can do it over and over and over again, right? This is definitely more of a threat than Magus. But if you're saying like you're caring more about the Perforoses, the Impact Tremors, the Pandemoniums of the world, right? You care way more about creating the creatures than making them big. Which is why there's another card called like Shared Animosity that I thought about putting in, but again, if that's not how you want to play the deck, then that doesn't really have a fit in here either.
It's not really that I don't want to play the deck that way, because like we talked about, I mean, I got Beastmaster, Coat of Arms, Craterhoof, Endraze. So I have all these things that are great for going wide with your creatures. It's just I haven't gotten to a point where I had one of those cards, and that was the advantageous play.
Sure.
I feel like, though, you don't want to just have the tokens to have the tokens.
Right.
I feel like a Perforos deck, you just want ETB. You're not really going wide or doing any of that. But since you have green in here, you do have access to the Crater Hoofs of the world and on the lower end runner. But I do agree. I think Jace's Archivist at a bare minimum should get swapped for Magus of the Wheel, because it is just that much better. Yeah. I'm just a little scared of cutting the Renata, because then I feel like at that point, okay, I cut Renata, I might as well cut Grumgully.
Sure.
Because then he's just by himself. He doesn't really do anything else. Right. So all right.
That was my first one.
My second one is I'm actually going to cut Endraze Forerunners.
Yeah.
5 colorless, green, creature boar, 7/7, vigilance, trample, haste. When it ETBs, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain vigilance and trample until end of turn. The reason I want to cut it is because I don't actually think the +2/+2 is that big of a deal when you're talking 1/1s. Having 3/3s is good, but
especially like the cards that give them +1/+1, like you said, you like that having them as blockers as well, right? So having a mass of them that are just static pluses from Grimgully or whatever, I think is better than this card. And you already have Craterhoof, which is this card, but like way better. Yeah. So what are you gonna cut it for?
So I think I'm gonna cut it, and honestly, I'm kind of torn. I got 2 cards, and I'm curious which one you think would be better.
Okay.
Because I honestly cannot decide between the 2. The first one is the Locust God. 4 colorless is it? Blue green or blue red, legendary creature god, 4/4 flying. Whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue red insect creature token with flying and haste. As much as my opponents are drawing cards, I am also drawing cards. So I will be making, now granted, my insect count would be a third of my snake count, because obviously I get snakes for each of the opponents that do it. But still, we talked about it, I had 40 something snakes that one game with Big Tuck. Well, that's still 10 or 11 flying insects that still do all the ETB stuff that the snakes do.
So I'm sorry, I'll get into Locust God, because that was actually one of the add-ins I was going to recommend. What was the other one? What was the other one you were going to go with?
I was actually thinking about Heroic Intervention.
Yeah, okay.
So
yeah.
I think Heroic Intervention does some stuff for me. It's a colorless green instant. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. It's not going to protect me from a Psych Rift, but it does protect me from a board wipe. And since it's permanents, not just creatures, I get to keep the, impact trimmers of the world and stuff like that. I mean, what do you think between those two?
I think so. I will switch mine around and talk about what I'm going to cut. So I was actually going to cut Xenagos God of Revels for the Locust God.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, here's why. So I was looking through this. So Xenagos God of Revels is a great card. Don't get me wrong. Awesome card, super good. 3 colorless, and I'm still waiting for mine because they haven't even shipped yet from the secret lair. So 3 colorless, red, green, legendary enchantment, creature god, indestructible, 6/5. It's got the devotion to 7. It's not a creature. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and +X/+X until end of turn, where X is that creature's power. So I was looking through the deck, and I think this pairs very nicely with your commander.
That's the reason he's in there, 100%.
Right. But if your commander is, as you continue to play this deck, people are going to realize that it's really heavy on the commander, and they're going to start removing it. You're going to have to start paying for that more. And then I kind of think this is a dead card a little bit, right? And also, it doesn't give trample, right? So if someone has a Drake, the haste is very nice, right? Because then you can start get the wheel going immediately on him, right?
Yeah.
But if your commander's not on the battlefield, this doesn't really do much, right? Whereas I feel the Locust God, similar to Psychosis Crawler, can kind of play as a backup commander for you, right?
Okay.
Because it's resilient to dying, because it goes to graveyard, comes back to hand, and it creates tokens that then do the rest of everything else that you want to do, right? While you're still wheeling. So if your commander is just locked down, if it gets Darksteel Mutation or something, this one plays nicely as kind of a backup win con for that, as well as like Psychosis Crawler. I feel like the two of them kind of act as your backup major win cons, or could.
So in your mind then, knowing that I was going to cut End-Raze, would you almost say cut End-Raze, cut Xenagos, put in Heroic Intervention, and put in Locust God?
Yeah, I think so. I think End-Raze is a good card because it's 49 cents and Crater Hoof is 50.
Well, here's the thing, though. You can't say good card because it's based on price. I mean, a card's dollar value has nothing to do with how good the card is.
So I think for its price, it's just like McDonald's pizza. It's very good for its price, or was very good for its price.
Gross.
So this card for $1 is good, but since you already have the better version of it, I don't think this card is going to win you as many games as you want, whereas Heroic Intervention will, if that makes sense for you, right? That'll save your commander, they'll save Locust God. If someone's trying to blow up enchantments or something, that'll save those, right? Which you need desperately. So I would agree with you that if you cut Xenagos and End-Raze and put in Locust God and Heroic Intervention, you will see more value out of those two cards than the other two.
Yeah, I think the only thing I don't like about Locust God over Xenagos is Xenagos is indestructible.
Sure.
Yes, and Locust God can go back to my hand, but then I'm paying 6 each turn to get him back out when I want to be spending that mana to wheel. I think I have an extra copy, so I may end up doing a swap and just making sure I only play this deck when I play you. So you always see this forever and ever.
Very exciting.
All right. Well, personal recommendation, I'm going to be cutting Nissa, Voice of Zendikar.
Okay.
So she's a colorless.
She's kind of on the list, yeah.
Yeah, colorless green. She is 3 loyalty ETB. She has 3 effects. +1, put a 0/1 plant creature token onto the battlefield. I mean, I guess it could be one of those in a pinch. Yeah. I needed one last ETB effect, but not really. Really, it's in here for the -2. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control.
Yeah.
Thinking about the go wide with the snakes. Yep. And it does have a -7. You gain X life, draw X cards. where X is the number of lanes you control. I mean, it's kind of like the Royal Silence. It's not inconsequential because I do get a lot of lands out on the battlefield, but I think I'm going to cut it for another wheel effect.
Okay.
And we're talking about one that honestly I've never seen before. It's sitting around $8 to $10, and it's 1 mana, but it is one-sided. We're talking Winds of Change.
Short sweet. I was wondering why this wasn't in there.
Sorcery. Each player counts the cards in his or her hand, shuffle cards in his or her deck, and then draws that many cards. And the card is so old, it literally says, when you play Winds of Change, it doesn't count as a card in your hand.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, I think for 1 mana, that's pretty good.
It's super good.
At least one of my opponents is going to have, after combat, 10-ish cards in hand. So that's 10 more triggers, even if maybe my other opponents only get 3 and 2 on a worst case.
And if you have 10, that's still 10 Locust God triggers, right? That's 10 Psychosis Crawler damage. So again, like I think that you by and large are going to have you by and large are going to be the person who has the most cards in your hand, right? And I think you will be able to use that very well with this. And again, it forces people to either act immediately or do nothing, right? Which is again, like we talked about, is a big part of this deck. So I have Winds of Change in Nekazar, and it does freaking work. So love it. Okay. It's a 1-drop, lowers your curve, all on board with it.
Well, what is your personal recommendation?
So I think I was gonna say cut Warstorm Surge. So 5 colorless and a red, because I just think it's overcosted for what it does. And personally, I think that Pandemonium is a better card, like we discussed earlier. Just because
why do you think it's a better card?
Because it's faster, and you said this deck comes out screaming, right? You can get Pandemonium down before anyone else comes up.
Yeah, but then anyone can use Pandemonium's trigger, and they can start killing my commander when they feel like it.
They have to play 5 creatures. So again, so that's up to you, right? I think you have enough effects in the deck where you can cut one of those, right? And if you're worried about tokens, which is a fair point in our meta, then cut the Pandemonium, keep the Warstorm Surge in. I just have never liked Warstorm Surge. I've never seen it really work well. I've seen Pandemonium do work, but what I was actually going to cut it for, so I did 1 wheel. I talked earlier about how you need a backup commander. Wheels are great. And then I also talked about how much I like snakes. So I got it's a snaky card, but only because of the artwork, which I'm guessing they will never reprint. So we're talking about Nature's Will. So 2 colorless, 2 green for an enchantment. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, tap all lands that players control and untap all lands you control. So even if you're not going to go super hard into the red zone with your tokens in terms of damage, you still will have piles of them, right? So what you can do with this is you can do stuff on your first phase, right? Like play Psychosis Crawler or whatever, right? And then this also is similar to Faraday's Puzzle Box. It's forcing people to do things then, right? If you have enough tokens, you could probably ding multiple players, especially if they're playing blue and they have no blockers. Tap whatever mana they have left down with, untap all your mana, and then do whatever you want on your second main phase. Especially if you're going with your commander, you're drawing cards, you're going to have more options, and then be able to wheel again or do whatever you want. So, and it's got the snakies on them. So It's a snake card.
The only thing I don't like about it is that it, in your example of the blue player, I'm then basically forcing the blue player to do their thing then, when before maybe they were just like, oh, I'll draw some cards and see what happens, and that gets me draw triggers.
This also locks the blue player down from counterspelling you on the second main phase too. So then if you have one of your big cards that you want to trigger, or one of the ways that you want to win the game, like the Aeons, the Echoes of Aeons or whatever, they can't do anything about it. You don't even have to worry about it, right? So that's why I have it in here. It gives you a third phase almost in the way I see it. You have so much more information to work with, locking people down. They can't do boardwalks. They can't do removals if they don't have it. And then especially if you play it right, if you attack the person to your right, they can't do anything for the whole run of it. And most importantly, it's a snaky snake.
Oh my goodness! All right, no, that's it's interesting. I don't know. I'll have to give it some thought.
I think when I can wait for the wrap up. So
Well, nice segue. Thanks for making it until the end of the episode. And as promised, here are some details about our giveaway from our sponsor, Level 1 Game Shop. We're going to be giving away a Mystery Commander 20 deck, accompanied with CMDTower playmat and sleeves. To enter, it's extremely simple. Just help promote the content we produce. You get an entry for all the interactions you do with us on social media. We're going to announce the winner on MTG Action 4 News June 2nd and social media soon after. And yes, I know what you're thinking. We're going to be doing a giveaway each month. It could be a sweet deck like this. It could be a sweet card. It could be a starter kit. It really just depends on what Level 1 Gaming can hook us up with. But you know what? We'd love you to leave us some feedback on YouTube and whatever podcast platform you listen to. Smash that subscribe. Smash that like. If you enjoyed it, feel free to leave that positive feedback or whatever star review makes others want to tune in as well. And if you'd like to reach out to us and also know more ways you can enter into the contest, here's how you can do that. You can reach me at Mr. Comma number 5 on Twitter, all spelled out except for the 5. Big Tuck, where can they slither into your DMs?
You can find me on Twitter at BigTuckTweeting. That's it. Just Big Tuck tweeting.
Big Tuck
I'll be
tweeting
there.
You can reach our main account at CMDTower on Twitter as well. We can also go to our website, CMDTower.com, where we will have the deck list and the article posted. You can also find us on Facebook at CMDTower. Basically, all you have to do is go into the series of tubes and type in...
We have let that series of tubes go... Wait, it's had it too good for too long. We just gotta start bringing that back in.
Yeah, it needed a break.
Oh, that's true.
Well, you can go type in Cultivate, Magus of the Wheel, Decimate, Tower, and you'll find us.
Okay.
If you want to engage our great audio production team for your own future projects, how would they do that, Squee?
Oh, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram at Rich Chaos Records. You can find me on Twitter at Dear Squee. I guess if you want to bring up any issues you're having in the COVID series of being stuck at home, feel free to ask me. I'll give you a prompt and ready answer.
They do music, they do podcasts, and they do have a full studio. So if you want to be in the Kansas City metro area, he can send you pictures, but you can't go there because you'll infect everyone.
Look, not touch.
That is
Look,
correct.
don't touch.
Stay away.
If you want to support the show as well as hook up our sponsor with the orders you're already doing, just head over to level1gameshop.com. When you place an order in the order notes, just type in CMD Tower so they know that you came from the collective.
It's a collective.
Outside of their own storefront, they do have a TCG store with over 99% accuracy rating and very competitive prices. And they also are the exclusive carriers of that CMD Tower playmat and sleeves we religiously talk about, as well as everything else you need from a Magic the Gathering and gaming perspective. Another way you can support the cast is head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/CMD Tower. We have several different reward tiers, from as simple as Discord access to even getting a guest spot on the episode with your own sweet brew. As well as each tier gives you additional entries into the monthly giveaways. And of course, thank you again to Pink Royal for the music they provided in all of our episodes.
R.I.P.
So, Big Tuck, how do you feel about how Xyris gonna let all these snakes on this plane?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think this is the most interesting Temur deck ever, to be honest. It's got a lot of different ways to go with it. And I think what you'll find is I think everyone that builds this will find their groove, right? They'll realize, like, oh, all these token enhancers don't do anything. I'm never getting the red zone. I'm just blocking and reeling and burning. Or you're like, ooh, these, like, I'm starting to get in these situations where these tokens are doing a little bit more. So I think this is a deck that's really good as is, but I think you'll as you play it, you'll continue to find, like, what parts of it that you really like and which one of those you really want to stake with.
And, you know, I think the cool thing about this commander, if you're looking to build it for your local play group or your distance play group, I think the direction that you go is going to depend on your play group.
Yeah.
So, like, our play group, in my opinion, has gotten a little bit further away from the combat damage. Go wide. It's more, I'm kind of focused in, like Paco the Taco. I'm doing combo-y type things, not necessarily infinite combos, but good synergy.
A lot of, like, propaganda, a lot of, like, don't attack me because I'm building this thing, right? Which I don't particularly care for, but that's just me. I like my battle cruisers. So I think that's why this deck has shined so much in our play group, because you don't even need to worry about the red zone.
Correct. But then I think if you're in other play groups where it is battle cruiser doing damage, then that's going to be more of a, hey, I do want all these snakes. I do want all these buffs. So that way, you swing at me with your 20/20, but I can combo block with 10/2/2 snakes, and it doesn't even make a dent in my army.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think it'll be playgroup dependent, but I would say, guys, when you first build it, try to do like I did, where it's a peanut butter spread of go wide, token ETB, wheel effects, drawing card effects, and then you can start to synergize it and focus it as you play it.
Just don't let that go on too long, or else it'll turn into Ghost of Girlfriend's past deck, and we don't want that.
Very, very true. Well, as our man Sam Jackson once said, you.